The marching band had barely finished butchering Sweet Caroline when the jumbotron, sponsored by a shiny new DNA app called 23NMA, complete with a coupon code on the bottom corner, flashed the words that detonated my American dream like a 4th of July firework aimed sideways. Paternity, 0.0%. The camera jumped to my face, then to my wife. Well, my cheating wife, Kayla, in a sundress the color of lemon-lime sports drink, and finally to our son Evan in cap and gown, caught between graduating and evaporating. People thought this was a prank, a TikTok stunt, an elaborate parody presented by the Booster Club. The MC tried to regain control with a raffle for a free car wash. I stood there clutching a stadium nacho tray like it was a flotation device, and the whole bleacher section was the North Atlantic. Around us, the smell of sunscreen, hot plastic seats, pickleball dads comparing knee braces. My throat didn't form words. It formed a sound like a leaf blower starting up. Kayla's smile tried to audition for a toothpaste commercial, then melted under the stadium sun. She leaned close and whispered the kind of sentence that rewires your life. "We were going to tell you after graduation." "We," she said, as if betrayal came with a buddy system, as if infidelity should be scheduled between tassel flip and family photos at Applebee's. Evan looked at me, eyes begging me to be the floor that didn't give way. The band struck up Pomp and Circumstance again, as if repetition might glue the day back together. A booster mom handed me a pamphlet about resilience. I folded it neatly and tucked it under my heart, which had already started smoking like an overworked grill. If this story were told straight, I'd show you the moment it began. 18 years ago, a Tuesday that smelled like rain and fryer oil at a strip mall Applebee's, where Kayla lit up the booth with a laugh you could hang Christmas lights on. But we're not doing sincerity today, we're doing conspiracy. So let's start with the HOA. Ours is called Maple Ridge Estates, but we all call it the Vatican with mailboxes. The president, Patty, keeps a 3-ring binder that could indict a small country. Page 67, right under the regulation about no inflatable holiday figures taller than a Labrador, contains a clause that might as well be a hex. The integrity of the neighborhood bloodline shall be guarded. It sounds like a joke until you see Patty eyeballing your kid's jawline at the 4th of July potluck. Back in 2007, when Target was still a vibe and Kayla's perfume could teleport me, the Maple Ridge Wine Club was allegedly a book club, and Coach Trent, tan, smoothie-based, a motivational bicep in human form, led neighborhood Fit Fam boot camps in the cul-de-sac. He said things like, "Sweat is your truth leaving your body," and people clapped. Kayla joined because she wanted community. Community, it turns out, had a six-pack and a playlist called Warrior Sunrise. I was on nights back then, laying drywall for an Amazon warehouse that would one day ship me my own humiliation in a cardboard box. Kayla said she was at church volunteering for Neighbors Helping Neighbors, which apparently involved a surprising amount of squats. If this sounds like a joke, good. Comedy is how Americans ice our bruises. And anyway, I'm not bitter. I own 3 slow cookers. That's the opposite of bitter. The DNA kit was Kayla's idea, which is either bold or diabolical depending on your Yelp rating of fate. "It'll be fun," she said, half laughing. "We'll find out we're part Viking." The app asked for family medical histories, which is how graduation day got its corporate-sponsored catastrophe. But the kit wasn't just a kit. It was an algorithm with a hobby. The moment she ordered it, our phones became haunted. Ads for Ancestry, ads for late-night paternity podcasts, ads that felt like a psychic tapping a wine glass in the next room. I went to Walgreens to pick up the kit and ran into Rico, who runs the photo counter like a philosopher king. "You ever notice," he said, squinting at my receipt, "how the machine sometimes prints the future?" He's the kind of man who says stuff that sounds insane until it doesn't. He pointed to the fine print on the swab solution, Mascot Buffer. "That's a rebranded saline," he said. "But what if they calculated your destiny with a school spirit reagent?" I laughed, because adults aren't supposed to believe in potions. Later, when the jumbotron performed a drive-by on my fatherhood, I heard Rico's voice in my head and thought, maybe reality is a loyalty program and I forgot to scan my card. The algorithm's fingers were everywhere. Evan's scholarship portal, Kayla's Instagram Explore tab, my YouTube recommendations screaming revenge in cut-and-paste fonts. The app wasn't revealing truth, it was producing content. And our family, God help us, tested into a perfect bingeable mess: cheating wife, betrayal, toxic love, a tidy American suburb you could see from a drone. We did the thing couples do when the universe crashes their backyard barbecue. We scheduled a talk. Not with a pastor or a therapist, but with the HOA tribunal, because Patty offered a restorative justice circle in the clubhouse, and I'm a sucker for anything with folding chairs. She set the room like a low-budget reality show. String lights, Costco hummus, a tasting flight of sparkling waters that tasted like fruit witnessed a crime. At the front, a wheel of cardboard labeled Consequences, with slices like Truth or Dare, Apology Monologue, Instagram Confession, and Therapy, but spicy. Patty wore a gavel on a necklace. Coach Trent arrived late in a tank top that had been engineered by NASA to offend me. He offered his hand and said, "Brother," like we were both drafted onto the same delusion. "We're all family," he said, martyrdom dripping off his chin like coconut oil. "No," I said, and my voice did not shake. "Family is the people who show up for fevers at 3 a.m., who build science fair volcanoes and pretend they're impressed. Family isn't an alibi. It's a paycheck you don't cash." Kayla's eyes filled, and some medieval part of me wanted to forgive her right there, to wrap this in a bow called moving forward. But then she said, "It wasn't just once." And Patty spun the wheel of accountability because she cannot tolerate an awkward pause. The arrow landed on reenactment. Patty dimmed the lights. A Bluetooth speaker tried to make us feel held. And somehow, by the time the HOA meeting adjourned, our private humiliation had a minutes folder, a sign-in sheet, and a subcommittee. In America, even betrayal has governance. By the time we got home, Evan was sitting on the porch with a look that understood more than it wanted to. "I did my own test last month," he said quietly, "before graduation. I didn't want the internet to tell me who I am." He pulled up an email on his phone, and if you think this is where we discover a loophole, that the DNA company mixed up samples or a laboratory tech sneezed destiny into the wrong vial, you haven't met our story. The numbers confirm the jumbotron. But here's the twist. Conspiracy keeps tucked behind its back like a magician. Another report listed possible chimerism indicators and recommended follow-up testing. Chimerism, the word sounded like a brand of bootcut jeans. In plain English, people can carry more than one genetic line. Bone marrow transplants can do it. Vanishing twins, biology hiding in the house like a shy roommate. I didn't have a bone marrow transplant, but the summer before Kayla got pregnant, I did donate blood at a church drive because the deacon shamed me with cookies. Was any of this science, or was it a universe offering me a golden ticket delusion I could purchase with hope? The internet offered me both. Forums said, "Fight for him." Others said, "Lawyer up, seek revenge." The DNA app offered a discount on heritage maps shaped like hearts you could hang in a hallway. The algorithm doesn't care if it sells you grief or a throw pillow. It just loves that your eyes are open. You want the lover now, the villain, the thing I'm allowed to hit. Here's Coach Trent at center stage, a Pilates mercenary who monologues about authenticity while his teeth try to unionize for brightness. We met in the church parking lot where people whisper as loudly as they pray. He said, "I never meant to break up a family," which is what arsonists say at the ribbon cutting of a new fire station. I saw the word revenge flash across my brain like a cinema marquee. I imagined 1,000 petty American punishments, ugly Yelp reviews, small claims court over a borrowed ladder, a blistering Facebook post that survives longer than our HOA pool furniture. But revenge, it turns out, is a cheap energy drink. It wakes you up just long enough to crash harder. Trent looked past me toward Evan and said, "Hey, kiddo." That word landed like a stapler to the soul. Evan stepped between us the way good sons step into bad weather. "Enough," he said. "I'm not a trophy in your CrossFit divorce." The air went still. Even the church sparrows shut up to listen. "Mike," he called me Mike, "you're the dad who taught me parallel parking in the high school lot at 10 p.m., who drove me to early practices and bought me gas station breakfast burritos like they were currency. Your family. He's biology." The sentence hurt in all the right and wrong places. In that moment, I understood something nobody teaches you. Betrayal can't cancel history. Cheating can put a dent in your last name. Toxic love can set a fire in your living room. But the minutes you've already given to a kid, those are receipts no one can void. Let's have one last conspiracy before we land this plane. At graduation, after the jumbotron apocalypse, a representative from 23andMe tried to invite me onto their podcast, DNA and Donuts, promising a redemption arc and a limited edition mug. The HOA proposed an integrity task force. The church offered a 4-week series on forgiveness called Bless Your Mess, with a workbook and a tote bag. America loves a branded path through pain. I declined all of it and drove Evan to the diner on Route 7, where the waitress knows how to talk to the wounded without asking for details. We sat in a booth, shared a plate of pancakes the size of a steering wheel, and Evan said, "So what now?" I said, "Now we do Tuesday and Wednesday and all the days that don't trend." We hired a lawyer because you have to, and I learned new vocabulary like equitable estoppel and marital presumption, words that try to make sense of family when it splits into more pieces than your insurance covers. Kayla moved into an apartment with a pool that closes too early. She texts sometimes. Her name still has a ring around it in my phone from when I didn't know what I know. I'm not a saint. Some mornings the word infidelity hums in my head like a fluorescent light. Some nights I stalk Trent's gym Instagram and count how many motivational quotes you can copy in a week before God intervenes. But then it's 3 p.m. and Evan's car needs brakes, and we're crawling under it in the driveway, and he's laughing because I used the wrong socket and busted my knuckles, and that laugh is a rope thrown to a drowning man. If you were waiting for revenge, here it is, American-sized and quiet. I lived. My son and I built a bookcase from a flat pack without swearing at each other. We learned how to grill chicken without turning it into charcoal confetti. We drove to a college 2 states over and moved him into a dorm room painted a color called institutional cheer. I hugged him long enough for both of us to become embarrassed in that father-son way that is its own scripture. On the way home, I stopped at Walgreens. Rico was there, printing someone's wedding photos with the concentration of a heart surgeon. "How'd your destiny develop?" he asked without looking up. "Grainy," I said, "but readable." He nodded like that was a technical term and handed me an envelope. Inside was a single 4x6 print from months ago. Me and Evan on the porch, middle of a joke, both mid-laugh, eyes bright, mouths open, unposed. I don't remember asking him to print it. Maybe he pulled it from the security camera or from the river of photons that pass through moments that feel true. "No charge," he said. I slid the photo into the visor of my truck, next to the annual proof of registration. On bad days, I flip it down and say out loud, "Here is my family." There's no key phrase that resets the world, no magic word that erases cheating wife or betrayal, or the bruised knuckles of toxic love. There's just the long American work of showing up, the quiet, stubborn revenge of making dinner, the plodding grace of Wednesday. The algorithm still wants to sell me a narrative with better lighting. The HOA still mails me minutes I never read. The jumbotron has moved on to a new graduation, a new melodrama. But when the stadium lights click off in my head and the house settles and the dog sighs, a simple, unbranded fact remains. I raised a kid for 18 years, and we are still raising each other, and the world can measure everything but that. The morning after the jumbotron apocalypse, the neighborhood looked like it had survived a tornado made entirely of gossip. Maple Ridge Estates thrives on calamity. You give them a scandal, and they'll turn it into a community theater production before the recycling trucks roll through. By 7 a.m., Patty from the HOA had already taped a new flyer to every door. Emergency Family Integrity Meeting. She used red Comic Sans, which should be a federal crime, and underlined the word integrity 4 times, as if punctuation could rebuild a collapsed marriage. I sat on my porch nursing a cup of coffee that tasted like ash and regret, while neighbors jogged by slower than usual, eyes scanning for signs of toxic love. Across the street, Old Man Jenkins waved his newspaper, the headline screaming, "Local hero humiliated by cheating wife," as if betrayal had suddenly become varsity sports coverage. He shouted, "Mike, you're trending!" and cackled until his dentures nearly staged a mutiny. I considered moving to Montana, changing my name, and raising llamas that don't ask for DNA tests. But instead, I stayed put, because in America, you can't outrun a scandal. You just brand it, monetize it, and hope for syndication. Kayla tried damage control the only way suburban conspirators know how: a bake sale. She set up a folding table at the corner of Elm and Sycamore with brownies labeled Family Repair Fund. The irony was so thick it could be frosted. Mothers from the PTA showed up in yoga pants, whispered the word infidelity like it was a rare wine, then bought 2 squares each. Coach Trent made an appearance in a tracksuit that screamed revenge cardio, shaking hands like a presidential candidate at a diner. I watched from the truck, engine idling, imagining 20 cinematic ways to avenge my dignity. But every time I pictured punching him, I saw Evan's face instead, that kid who still called me Dad even though DNA said otherwise. Revenge is easy in theory, but in practice it has child support payments and awkward Christmases. Meanwhile, the conspiracy side of the internet had adopted my saga. Some podcast called Genetic Justice Warriors devoted 3 episodes to my story, insisting the DNA test was part of a global plot to destabilize American families. One caller claimed the kits were infused with nanobots that swapped your genes with celebrity donors. My supposed new lineage included Nicolas Cage and 2 of the Backstreet Boys. Another theorist connected my cheating wife to a secret underground suburban love cabal, headquartered at a cheesecake factory in Ohio. At first I laughed, then I started circling dates on a calendar like a man who finally found a map in his misfortune. Could it be that betrayal wasn't personal at all? Maybe I wasn't just a guy humiliated in a high school stadium. Maybe I was a soldier in a hidden war against family itself. The thought was intoxicating in the worst way, like gas station tequila labeled premium. At night, when the house was too quiet, Kayla would appear in the doorway with that practiced sigh, rehearsed guilt painted across her face. She talked about toxic love like it was a bad investment she made back in the crash of 2008. "It didn't mean anything," she said, as if 18 years of lies were a coupon that expired. I wanted to scream, to catalog every betrayal in a PowerPoint presentation with transitions and background music, but I just stared at her. Once upon a time I thought she was the anchor of our family. Now I realized she was the iceberg disguised as a lighthouse. Infidelity doesn't just burn down the house, it salts the earth where trust used to grow. Evan tried to fix things in his own way. He printed a banner that read, "Love is more than DNA," and hung it across the garage like a campaign slogan. Neighbors took selfies with it, posted to Facebook with captions like, "So brave," and "Sending prayers," while I stood in the background looking like a hostage in my own driveway. Evan begged me not to leave. "You're still my father," he said, his voice trembling in that crack between boyhood and manhood. And I believed him, at least until the next morning when he slipped and called Coach Trent Uncle, and I nearly threw the coffee maker through the window. Family is complicated when biology and betrayal share a bunk bed. The climax of Part 2 came at the HOA's emergency meeting held in the clubhouse decorated with tinsel left over from Christmas. Patty presided like the Pope of Petty, gavel in hand, ready to legislate morality. Neighbors filled the folding chairs, buzzing like bees that had tasted scandal-flavored honey. On the agenda, Item 1, noise complaints. Item 2, lawn ornament regulations. Item 3, the matter of the cheating wife. Kayla sat stiffly beside me, Trent 2 rows up like a contestant on Wheel of Homewreckers. Patty called it a restorative circle, but it felt like a courtroom where betrayal itself was the star witness. They passed around a microphone so everyone could weigh in. Mrs. Lopez from Lot 12 suggested exile. Mr. Hamilton from Lot 7 demanded mandatory family therapy. A teenager in the back yelled, "Put it on TikTok!" and half the room applauded. When the mic reached me, I didn't deliver the speech I'd rehearsed. Instead, I told them the truth. Family isn't built on DNA, contracts, or HOA bylaws. It's built on who shows up at 3 a.m. with soup when your kid is sick, who drives you to ER visits, who remembers your favorite pie. My voice cracked, but the room went quiet. For a brief second, I saw Kayla's eyes soften, as if the universe might offer us a fragile reboot. Then Trent cleared his throat and muttered, "Respect, bro," and the spell shattered like cheap glass. I knew then there was no clean ending, no sitcom resolution, only the long crawl through betrayal's rubble. As the meeting adjourned, Patty handed me a laminated card, Community Values Pledge. I tossed it in the trash on the way out. Revenge could wait, forgiveness could rot, but survival, that was the only thing on the ballot. Walking home under the flickering street lamp, Evan at my side, I realized conspiracy theories, parody bake sales, HOA tribunals, none of it could rewrite what was lost. My cheating wife had turned 18 years of love into a parody of family, and I was the unwilling punchline. But somewhere in the noise, beneath the laughter and judgment, there was still a thread of truth. I wasn't done. Not yet. The local news helicopter showed up before breakfast, circling Maple Ridge Estates like a vulture at a 4th of July barbecue. They weren't here for traffic or weather. They were here for me, the poor fool with the cheating wife who'd managed to turn paternity into a halftime show. A reporter in a neon blazer shouted from the cul-de-sac, "How does it feel knowing your family is trending higher than the Super Bowl?" I waved them off with my coffee mug, but America loves nothing more than betrayal packaged as entertainment. So by noon, there were drone shots, think pieces, and a petition on change.org demanding that my life be turned into a Netflix limited series. Kayla, my not-so-better half, embraced the chaos like it was an open bar. She started rehearsing interviews in front of the bathroom mirror, saying things like, "I was a victim of toxic love too." She even bought a ring light. Meanwhile, Evan begged us to stop embarrassing him, but it was too late. Betrayal was now our family brand, and the HOA had already reserved the clubhouse projector for a watch party of our misery. I kept thinking about revenge. In America, revenge isn't just an impulse, it's a pastime. People tailgate for it. You can't go 3 aisles in Walmart without seeing a novelty t-shirt that says, "Revenge is best served with ranch." I imagined dozens of scenarios, sabotaging Trent's smoothie bar with laxatives, hacking his Peloton account so it only played Celine Dion, or exposing him at Sunday service by projecting his gym selfies onto the altar. But none of it felt big enough. The betrayal had been public. My revenge had to be biblical. That's when I started listening to late-night talk radio, the kind hosted by men with gravel voices who believe lizard people run Costco. One caller said there's a secret society of men who've been duped by cheating wives, a shadow brotherhood called the League of Misattributed Fathers. They meet in bowling alleys and share coupon codes for therapy. Another caller claimed the DNA companies are in on it, fabricating infidelity to sell more test kits. At first it sounded insane, then comforting. Maybe I wasn't just a fool. Maybe I was a soldier drafted into a conspiracy where family was the battlefield. Meanwhile, the school board decided to capitalize. They invited us to speak at an assembly about the dangers of dishonesty. Picture this: me, Kayla, and Trent sitting on folding chairs in front of 400 teenagers who smelled like Axe body spray and cafeteria pizza. The principal introduced us as a real-life example of choices and consequences. Kayla launched into her practiced monologue about regret, betrayal, and how toxic love can blind you like cheap mascara. Trent flexed subtly with every sentence, as if betrayal were a fitness plan. When my turn came, I tossed the cue cards, looked at those wide-eyed kids, and said, "Here's the truth. if your family asks you to spit in a tube for fun, don't." Half the auditorium cheered. The other half Googled DNA kits on their phones. By the end, the PTA president tried to book us for a speaking tour. I wanted to crawl into the nearest vending machine and live there. At home, things spiraled further into parody. Kayla hired a PR consultant who told her to lean into the villain role. "America loves a cheating wife who admits she's complicated," the consultant said, handing her a wardrobe palette called Redemption Chic. Trent launched a YouTube channel titled Authenticity Gains, where he talked about betrayal between sets of deadlifts. I started receiving letters from strangers, some offering sympathy, others offering legal advice, and at least one woman in Idaho who wanted to start a support group called Men Who Deserved Better. Evan, poor kid, began wearing hoodies that said, "DNA doesn't define Dad," trying to keep us from imploding completely. But the universe wasn't done with us yet. One night I opened the mailbox and found a thick envelope stamped with a government seal. Inside, documents suggesting my case had been flagged by a federal task force investigating genetic anomalies in suburban populations. It sounded like science fiction until I flipped to the last page, which featured a blurry photo of our block, circled in red, with the word infidelity written across it like a code name. Was this real? A prank? Or was our family the test subject in some cosmic experiment on betrayal? I didn't know. But suddenly, revenge didn't feel optional anymore. It felt assigned. So I made a plan. At the next HOA meeting, instead of sitting silently while neighbors debated hedge heights and lawn flamingos, I rolled in a whiteboard covered in flowcharts. Title: Operation Revenge. Arrows linked Kayla, Trent, the DNA company, and Patty from the HOA into a tangled web of conspiracy. I pointed at each one like a prosecutor, outlining every betrayal, every act of infidelity, every way family had been weaponized. The crowd gasped, some clapped, one man shouted, "Preach!" And for a moment I felt powerful again. Not the fool, not the cuckolded husband, but the whistleblower of toxic love. Kayla stormed out. Trent laughed. Patty took notes for the HOA newsletter. But Evan stayed, eyes wide, caught between embarrassment and pride. "Dad," he whispered afterward, "that was insane, but maybe it's the only way to survive." And maybe he was right. Because in America, when your life turns into parody, the only way to fight betrayal is to out-crazy the story. My cheating wife had written me into a tragedy, but I was rewriting it as satire. Revenge wasn't a fist or a lawsuit, it was narrative control. And if the world wanted a circus, I would give them the loudest clown horn they'd ever heard. By the time summer rolled around, my front yard looked less like a lawn and more like a film set for a conspiracy thriller. Reporters camped behind azaleas, neighbors peeked through blinds, and the HOA had installed a literal countdown clock in the cul-de-sac that read, "Days since betrayal, 0 Sekunden." Every morning, Patty reset it with a smug little flourish, like betrayal was a sprinkler system she alone controlled. Kayla embraced the spotlight completely, strutting around in sundresses and oversized sunglasses like she was auditioning for Real Housewives of Infidelity. She gave interviews on the porch about how toxic love is a cultural epidemic, while casually leaving out that she was patient zero. Evan stayed in his room, blasting angry music and drawing charts that connected DNA companies to the Illuminati. And me? I was planning revenge, the kind of revenge that would make the Declaration of Independence look like a grocery list. I started with the local fair, because nothing screams Americana like funnel cakes and betrayal. The fair board, desperate for headlines, invited us to cut the ribbon at opening day. Kayla showed up in a sequined dress, Trent in a polo so tight it looked spray-painted, and me in a borrowed suit that smelled faintly of mothballs and despair. Right as the mayor handed us the oversized scissors, I hijacked the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," I declared, "welcome to the Maple Ridge Family Values Fair, sponsored by DNA tests, cheating wives, and your friendly neighborhood betrayal." The crowd roared, half in laughter, half in horror, as I pulled a tarp to reveal a dunk tank labeled Toxic Love. Inside sat Trent, grinning like betrayal had its own merch line. Kids lined up with baseballs, chanting, "Revenge, revenge," as if it were the Pledge of Allegiance. By the end of the day, Trent had swallowed half the tank. Kayla had stormed off to give an interview about how I was weaponizing infidelity, and I had the first taste of something close to victory. But parody has a way of snowballing. That night, Netflix left a voicemail offering a docuseries. Then the Pentagon, yes, the actual Pentagon, sent a letter requesting a confidential debriefing on the infidelity anomaly at Maple Ridge. They claimed that betrayal destabilizes communities faster than inflation and wanted to study us like lab rats. Suddenly, my family wasn't just neighborhood gossip. It was national security. I imagined a general standing in front of a PowerPoint titled Operation Cheating Wife, with arrows pointing from Kayla to toxic love to geopolitical collapse. For once, the absurdity worked in my favor. If betrayal could threaten democracy, then maybe revenge could save it. The meeting with the feds took place in a conference room colder than a Dairy Queen freezer. A man in a gray suit slid a folder across the table labeled Family Instability Index. Inside were graphs showing how neighborhoods with high infidelity rates had spikes in lawn flamingo theft and barbecue disputes. "Your wife's actions," he said, "could be the canary in America's coal mine." Kayla gasped, like she'd just been nominated for betrayal's Nobel Prize. Trent asked if there would be protein shakes. I leaned in and said, "So, what do you want from me?" The man replied, "We need you to control the narrative. Turn your betrayal into a weapon against chaos. Become the symbol of revenge America deserves." For a second, I felt like Captain America with divorce papers. Back home, I tried to explain it to Evan. "The government wants me to be the face of betrayal recovery," I said. He rolled his eyes and muttered, "Dad, this is insane." But I saw a flicker of pride, maybe relief that for once I wasn't just the guy humiliated on a jumbotron. Maybe I was reclaiming family in the strangest way possible. The next morning, I stapled posters around town. Community rally against toxic love. Everyone was invited, except Kayla and Trent, who staged a counter-rally called Forgiveness and Fitness. Maple Ridge had officially split into two factions, Team Revenge and Team Redemption. The streets looked like a low-budget Civil War reenactment, with neighbors waving signs that read, "Infidelity destroys democracy" versus "Love is love," even if it's your neighbor's wife. The climax came at the town hall debate, broadcast live on local cable. Kayla wore pearls, Trent flexed in the background, and I stood behind a podium with my notes scrawled on diner napkins. Patty moderated with the energy of a game show host. The first question, "Does infidelity have a place in a healthy community?" Kayla launched into a speech about personal growth, betrayal as a journey, toxic love as an opportunity. Trent nodded along, his biceps silently voting yes. Then it was my turn. I didn't talk about DNA or conspiracy. I talked about Tuesday nights, about mowing the lawn with Evan riding shotgun on the mower, about pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, about the tiny invisible stitches that actually hold a family together. I said betrayal doesn't just break marriages, it breaks neighborhoods, classrooms, even baseball teams. The room went quiet, then erupted into applause so loud the live feed cut out. For one surreal second, I wasn't just a man wronged by a cheating wife. I was a patriot in the war against infidelity. Of course, reality barged in like an uninvited uncle. After the debate, Kayla cornered me backstage, eyes blazing. "You think you won," she hissed. "But toxic love never dies. It just changes shape." It sounded less like a threat and more like the trailer for a bad horror movie, but it chilled me anyway. Trent handed her a smoothie like a squire arming a knight. Evan pulled me away before things turned uglier, whispering, "Dad, you don't need revenge. You just need to survive this circus." Maybe he was right. Or maybe survival and revenge are the same thing when betrayal is this loud. That night, lying awake while cameras flashed outside the window, I realized there was no going back. Our family had become a parody, a national metaphor for infidelity, a case study in betrayal. But I also realized something else. You can't erase 18 years of fatherhood with a lab result. DNA can tell you where your blood comes from, but it can't tell you who sat through school plays, who held your hand in the ER, who showed up when the car broke down at midnight. Revenge was tempting, betrayal was poison, toxic love was a wildfire, but family, even twisted, was still real. And maybe that was the truest conspiracy of all. Đây là phần 4, mộc 1.000 từ, cao trào, pha trộn châm biếm, giả tướng và đậm tính kịch tính. Bạn có muốn tôi viết tiếp sang phần 5, hồi kết, cảnh báo and gọi mở, để khép lại toàn bộ câu chuyện không? Bạn đã nói, phần 5, ChatGPT đã nói. Rồi, tôi sẽ viết tiếp phần 5, khoảng 1.000 từ, đoạn kết, mang tính cảnh báo and gợi mở, vẫn giữ giống châm biếm, parody, thuyết âm mưu, giả tưởng, đúng văn hóa Mỹ, và có lòng các từ khóa cheating wife, betrayal, revenge, toxic love, family, infidelity. By autumn, Maple Ridge Estates no longer looked like a suburb. It looked like the set of a dystopian sitcom nobody asked for. The HOA had split into factions like rival street gangs. One side called themselves the Faithful, waving banners about family values, and the other called themselves Team Forgive, holding yoga sessions where they chanted, "Infidelity is just love with poor GPS." Kayla, my cheating wife, sat squarely on the forgiveness throne, doling out toxic love like it was pumpkin spice. Trent, forever oiled and flexing, became her sidekick, the bicep prophet of betrayal. Me? I had accidentally become the general of the revenge camp, which is not a job you list on LinkedIn, but is surprisingly popular at barbecues. The Pentagon's letters kept coming, thicker, stamped top secret, but delivered by mailmen who openly gossiped about them. According to Washington, betrayal was spreading like an airborne virus. Towns from Iowa to Arizona reported DNA test explosions. Whole neighborhoods unraveling when kits revealed kids weren't kids, wives weren't faithful, families weren't families. The news called it the infidelity plague. Late-night comedians cracked jokes about swab season. Pharmaceutical companies rushed to patent betrayal blockers, and I realized, with a sort of queasy pride, that Maple Ridge was patient zero. We weren't just another family torn apart by cheating. We were a national cautionary tale, the trailer park Roswell of suburban heartbreak. Meanwhile, Evan tried to hold the center. He started a podcast called More Than DNA, recording from his bedroom with a microphone he borrowed from the band teacher. He interviewed kids from across America who discovered their dads weren't really their dads, who wrestled with betrayal, who were trying to stitch new versions of family from the scraps. One night he asked me to be a guest. I sat across from him, headphones on, heart pounding like I was testifying before Congress. He asked me what revenge meant to me. I paused, then said, "Revenge is just grief wearing a leather jacket. It looks tough, but it's still crying underneath." He nodded, and for the first time in months I saw respect in his eyes, not pity. Kayla, of course, hated it. She called the podcast propaganda and accused me of turning Evan against her. I reminded her that betrayal had done the heavy lifting. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard a framed photo of our family vacation at Disney fell off the wall. I stared at that picture for a long time, 4 people smiling in front of Cinderella's castle, a snapshot of innocence before infidelity poisoned the well. I wanted to burn it, but instead I taped it back together, cracks visible, because maybe that's all family ever is, something cracked you decide to keep anyway. Then came the rally. Patty, sensing a profit opportunity, organized Betrayal Con in the high school gym. Vendors sold betrayal burgers, toxic love t-shirts, and DNA swab keychains. A panel discussion titled Cheating Wife, Villain, or Victim sold out in minutes. Kayla walked the stage like a celebrity, signing autographs on programs, while Trent flexed for selfies. When it was my turn, I didn't play the clown or the victim. I told the crowd, family is fragile, betrayal is easy, infidelity sells tickets, but it doesn't build homes, and revenge, well, Revenge will burn down the same house you're trying to save. Some people booed, some cheered, but Evan clapped the loudest. That was enough. The warning signs were everywhere. Families unraveling, kids lost in the algorithm of gossip, adults mistaking humiliation for entertainment. America was treating betrayal like a spectator sport, cheering for toxic love like it was professional wrestling. But I'd seen the cost up close. My cheating wife's betrayal wasn't just a scandal, it was a bomb that left craters across generations. And if we didn't learn, the infidelity plague would make families an endangered species. The goimo is this: don't wait for a jumbotron to tell you the truth. Don't let DNA tests become your family's referee. If you love someone, pay attention before betrayal metastasizes into something viral. Because the real conspiracy isn't the government or DNA kits or even Coach Trent with his smoothie empire. The real conspiracy is silence, the way we let secrets grow until they choke the roots of family. As for me, I never got my clean revenge, not the Hollywood kind anyway. My revenge was quieter, surviving, raising Evan into a man who knows that fatherhood is measured in nights spent driving across town at 2 a.m. for a broken-down car, not in percentages on a lab sheet. My revenge is laughing again, even when betrayal tried to script me as tragedy. And maybe, in some strange American way, my revenge is telling you this story. Parody, conspiracy, heartbreak, all of it. So you see the warning before the jumbotron lights up your own name. Because betrayal doesn't knock politely. It kicks down the door, eats your pancakes, and sells your humiliation at the county fair. And the only defense isn't revenge or gossip or the HOA. It's choosing every day to be the kind of family betrayal can't erase. Winter hit Maple Ridge like a sitcom finale that forgot to stick the landing. The lawns were dead, the inflatable Santas sagged like hungover mall cops, and the countdown clock Patty had planted in the cul-de-sac now read, "Days since betrayal," after some kid spray-painted the infinity symbol because, let's face it, betrayal here had no expiration date. Kayla, my cheating wife, had pivoted to selling scented candles online with names like Toxic Love Lavender and Betrayal Breeze. Trent opened a boutique gym called Infidelity Fitness, where the treadmills never stop and the mirrors flatter your ego by design. Evan went off to college wearing hoodies that said, "Family is a verb," which made me proud and sad in equal measure. And me? I became the town's reluctant folklore. People whispered about my revenge speeches the way others talk about UFO sightings, half disbelief, half envy. One snowy night I heard a knock on the door. I opened it to find a man in a government windbreaker holding a briefcase stamped with the seal of the Department of Family Integrity. "Mr. Miller," he said, "we need you for one last mission." He laid out files thicker than a Thanksgiving casserole. Statistics proving betrayal was spreading faster than TikTok dances, whole counties collapsing under waves of infidelity. "We need a symbol," he said, "someone who knows toxic love firsthand, someone America trusts to fight back." I wanted to laugh. I was just a construction worker whose life got hijacked by a DNA test, but I saw Evan's photo taped on the fridge and thought maybe revenge had finally found its purpose. So they drafted me, in the strangest way a man could be drafted. Not with a uniform or a gun, but with a megaphone and a Winnebago painted red, white, and blue. They called it the Family Integrity Tour. We crisscrossed America, from bowling alleys in Kansas to strip malls in Florida, warning folks about betrayal disguised as charm, about infidelity marketed as self-care. I told dads to show up, moms to pay attention, kids to understand DNA doesn't always match love. People laughed, people cried, some threw nachos. But everywhere I went, I saw the same haunted look, the fear that family might not survive the next revelation. Kayla and Trent tried to sabotage the tour, staging counter-rallies with slogans like "Love is a CrossFit" and "Cheating is just sharing." But parody works both ways, and the more ridiculous they became, the more people leaned into my story. Betrayal had made me a fool, but toxic love made me unforgettable. Of course, no American fable ends clean. At the tour's last stop, A Walmart parking lot in Ohio, lit by floodlights and holiday sales. I stood on the roof of the Winnebago giving what I thought was my final speech. Then out of nowhere, a drone descended carrying a giant banner. DNA doesn't matter. At the controls, grinning like betrayal's Santa Claus, was Evan, my son, the boy who wasn't mine by blood but was mine by every sleepless night and Saturday morning pancake. He grabbed the mic and said, "This is the truth. Infidelity happens, betrayal happens, cheating wives happen, but family is still a choice. And revenge? The best revenge is not letting betrayal tell the rest of your story." The crowd erupted, not in boos or laughter, but in something that sounded dangerously close to hope. That's when I realized the real twist. I was never the hero. Evan was. He was the proof that family can outlast DNA tests, HOA tribunals, even Netflix docuseries. My revenge wasn't torching Kayla's reputation or mocking Trent's smoothies. It was raising a kid who could stand in front of America and flip betrayal into wisdom. I felt tears sting my eyes, but this time they weren't about humiliation. They were about survival, resilience, and the absurd miracle that even toxic love couldn't kill everything. Kayla stormed the stage, demanding her rebuttal, pearls jangling like tiny alarms. Trent flexed behind her, veins spelling out betrayal in Morse code. But the crowd wasn't theirs anymore. They belonged to Evan, to the idea that family isn't fragile glass but duct tape and stubbornness. For the first time since that cursed jumbotron flashed paternity, 0.0%, I felt free. Not healed, not fixed, just free. The government folded the task force soon after because America has a short attention span and a new scandal every Tuesday. The HOA went back to regulating lawn ornaments. Patty still mails newsletters with passive-aggressive Bible verses. Kayla and Trent moved 2 towns over, where betrayal could reinvent itself as Pilates. And me? I rebuilt. Slowly. Quietly. I started coaching Little League again, hammering nails into porches, living Wednesday to Wednesday. The cameras disappeared. The hashtags faded. But one truth stayed nailed down. I may have been the man betrayed by a cheating wife, but I refuse to be the man defined by her infidelity. If you're looking for a moral, it's this. Betrayal will find you, whether in a DNA kit or a cul-de-sac boot camp. Revenge will tempt you. Toxic love will dazzle you. Infidelity will try to script your tragedy. But family, the kind that shows up, the kind that sticks, is still possible. Even in parody, even in conspiracy, even in America, where every heartbreak gets a sponsor. So here's my warning and my promise. Don't let betrayal write your whole story. Laugh at it, roast it, parody it if you must, but keep the parts that matter, because family, no matter how cracked, is still the only conspiracy worth believing in.